Good day. Welcome to another lesson from our program Super Dealmaker Mini MBA. Today we'll be discussing how you develop an operational plan. We started, initially the first 3 lessons, it was introduction to business plan development, and we looked at how you identify a business opportunity, and then the lesson that we just finished with now is how you conduct your feasibility study. So after you've identified a business idea or a business opportunity, you conduct your feasibility study so that you ascertain if this business opportunity is really a business opportunity. Is it viable? Is it economical? And after you looked at the viability, you do the viability study. And as discussed in the viability lesson, or feasibility lesson, you look at different things. You look at the market. Is there a market opportunity for this opportunity that you think is an opportunity? Operationally, will you be able to execute it? Do you have the resources to execute? Do you have the skills to execute that business opportunity? Then you look at the business model that you want to implement, a viable business model or a feasible business model, to see if you will be able to execute that. And lastly, you look at the financial viability, to say, is it feasible financially? Will I be able to make profit from this venture that I'm looking at? And will I be able to make a good return on investment? Remember, to establish a business, you need to invest money. It might be your own money, where it's called bootstrapping, or you might be using external funding, which is called funding, external funding. And then you have different type of fundings, or you can have a loan, you can have an equity funding, you can have government grants and incentives. So it differs from business to business. And that investment require a return on investment. So when you're looking at the feasibility of a business, you look at the profitability and the return on that investment. Will you be able to make a positive economic return from the money that you've put in the business? Now, let's say the assumption is you will look at different business ideas or business opportunities. Some will not be viable, some will be viable after you've done your feasibility study. So today we're looking at operational plan, to develop an operational plan in your business plan. Now we're developing a business plan. Remember, we identified the market opportunity. We did our research. We looked at our customer base. We looked at the market, the trends, the economic trends. If you had that opportunity, then we concluded that this opportunity is worth pursuing. That's the first lesson on identifying opportunities. Then, as I said, now we did the lesson on feasibility study. You can go on the platform and just go through that lesson so that you understand what does it mean when we're talking about feasibility study. And now we assume that you have done your homework, you did the feasibility study. You might have done for few projects or for different business model, doesn't matter. So now we assume that your feasibility study was positive, meaning it shows that after you've done your study, it shows that this business is viable. Okay, so if the business is viable, then now you need to operationalize the business plan and to develop a business plan. So in this case, we're calling it an operational plan, to say, how are you going to operate? We're going to look at different components of the business plan in terms of the operations, and then to assess if operationally you will be able to pull it off. You will be able to take advantage of this business opportunity. Okay, that's the introduction on how we're looking at this program or this lesson. And now we're going into the details of an operational plan. The purpose of this lesson, the operational plan, is to identify the activities that your organization needs to implement to start your business venture. So operations, meaning you need to set up now. So for you to set up, obviously you need a business plan. So you might call it developing a business plan, but it's more an operational plan. So this becomes the component of your business plan. It's not necessarily the full business plan, but it's the component on the operational side of the business plan. So what will happen is you develop your operational plan, and then you're gonna do your market plan, and you do your financial plan. Then those plans combined will make your business plan. So the intention or the purpose of this lesson is to identify the key activities that will be required for you to execute on the business opportunity that you have identified. Again, we assume that you did your market, you have identified the business opportunity, you did your feasibility study. Now you want to implement that feasibility or that business concept. The assumption is you are happy that is viable based on the study that you have done. So now with the operational plan, we're looking at overall, how are you going to execute this business opportunity? Then we'll go through the processes in terms of what are the activities that you need to put in place or to execute for you to take advantage of this business opportunity. So that's the purpose of this lesson. And in terms of the rationale, remember, you can see a business opportunity, you can do a feasibility study, but if you don't develop a proper operational plan, the execution part might be a challenge, because if without an operational plan, then you'll be executing on the fly. That might not work. You need to have a proper strategy in terms of how you're going to execute it. So you need to have your objectives, you need to have your vision, you need to have your mission. So you develop those to say operationally, how, in terms of strategy, what do I want to achieve? So you look at your vision. Maybe it's RMK, you want to develop a platform that democratizes access to entrepreneurship and access to funding. So that's our mission, to say every South African child must have access to a business plan and a platform that can help them access funding. That's the super deal maker. That's our vision. So if every South African child can have that opportunity, we will have achieved our mission. And in terms of the mission, they say the mission must be audacious. It must scare you if you think about it. So if you look at what we're trying to achieve, or the vision of Super Deal Maker, making this app available to each and every South African, that's a big mission, because it will change the game in terms of access to finance, access to markets, development of business plans. So it's going to change the industry, how it operates. But that's what is required for someone, or for setting up a business. You must have a big vision, what you want to achieve. And then that's your vision, and then you have your mission. Your mission is, you have a vision, which is the audacious one, and the mission is, how are you going to achieve that objective? So for us, let's say for Super Deal Maker to put this tool, this app, in the hands of each child, or for everyone in South Africa, that means we need to continuously be innovative. So in terms of our mission, it will be to continuously innovate and develop tools that will help improve the app, so that it makes it easier for South Africans to access the app, in terms of to develop a business plan, to access markets, to access funding, and to understand how to manage a business. So now that's our mission, to say we need to be innovative in developing the tools that will assist people to access the app, and the app should assist them to access funding, access markets, and understand the business management in general. Because in terms of our app, is more, it doesn't only give you tools, it also gives you educational material. It's more an educational tool, so that we introduce as many people as we can into entrepreneurship, because South Africa we have a high unemployment rate. So entrepreneurship is one of the careers that currently are not encouraged, or and then there are no resources or there are no platforms that assist many people to access this entrepreneurship. So even if people in underserviced areas, they struggle to access training or access entrepreneurship supports, grants and all that. So with Super Dealmaker, we're developing an app that will help them access those the business support, the funding easier, and the market will be able to fund them easier, so that they can be an integrated ecosystem for small entrepreneurs. So that is our vision, and from that vision then you develop an operational plan. So but before you get to an operational plan, then you need to set your objectives. So what are your objectives? What do you want to achieve? And the objective, when you're setting objectives for your operation, you need to make sure that they say those goals must be smart, meaning they must be, you mustn't have complicated goals. Your goals must be specific to say you want to achieve. Let's say with Super Dealmaker, saying you want to make sure that each and every person in South Africa will have access to a platform that will help them develop a business plan and access markets and access funding. But when you're setting our objective, that's our mission, right? That's where we want to get to. And then, but when you're setting the objectives, obviously we wouldn't be able to achieve that in one day. So what happens is, to achieve that, you need to set measurable goals. They must be specific. One, in terms of what do you want to achieve? And then they must be measurable. How are we going to measure if we are meeting our objectives? Let's say for Super Dealmaker, in the first year, we want to reach 1,000 entrepreneurs. In the second year, we reach maybe 10,000. In the fourth year, we need to reach 100,000. And continuously reaching 100,000 until we reach our target. Okay, so that's how you set your goals. So it must be measurable, and in terms of, okay, the T at the end, it must be time-based, where you know that in the first year, is this what you want to achieve, second year, third year, and fourth year. So there must be time allocated to it in terms of the goals that you want to achieve. So is the T, and then they must be achievable. That's the A. In terms of the resources that you have, the skills that you have, the location, where are you based? So it will be nice just to set crazy objectives, but if they are not achievable, then it's a problem, because you wouldn't be able to achieve. And if you have a team, if you're not achieving a goal, you don't get motivated. Normally, people or entrepreneurs are motivated when they set goals and they achieve them, because that shows progress. So it shows that you are progressing. So therefore, it's important that your goals are achievable and they are realistic. Okay, achievable is one thing. Yes, can you reach maybe 4 million entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs, using the Super Dealmaker app? Yes, it is possible to be achieved. But given our resources, so it is achievable. But given our resources, are they realistic? Now we're talking about the R in the SMART. So are they realistic? We don't have the resources. We don't have the marketing budget. We are bootstrapping our business, meaning we are funding this application, this app ourselves. So without external funding, that means our growth is a little bit slower than it should be, or it could be if we had external funding. So now the growth is, if we want to reach 4 million entrepreneurs, which is our ultimate goal. Okay, not necessarily our ultimate goal. I'm just giving an example that if that was our ultimate goal, then for us to reach that 4 million, it might take us the next 10 years, because we lack funding. We have to reinvest whatever the money that we're making from the business. So the growth will be slower than if we had, let's say, funding. We could reach that number quicker. So if we say we want to reach 4 million in a year, it's not realistic. Yes, it's achievable if we had the resources, but it's not realistic. Okay, and then the T, as I've mentioned earlier, is the the timeline. There must be a timeline attached to the objectives that you set. Okay, so we have set our objectives, and when actually you're setting your objectives for your operational plan or your business plan, you need to make sure that it's not only financially based. One, it might be that you need to raise funding. You have a target, maybe you want to raise 10 million rand in funding. Two, there might be a financial target that you want to achieve. Maybe it's turnover. We want to make 2 million turnover in the first year, 5 million in the second year, 100 million in the third year. Those are the financial targets. So you need to have, one is the capital raising if you are raising capital. Two is on the revenue side in terms of the profit that you want to, or not profit, the turnover that you want to achieve. Three, it might be on operational efficiency. Okay, not necessarily they have to be, but it's nicer or it's better for you to think broader than you find that your objectives are targeting one section. So operationally, you need to make sure that maybe if your business is operational or manufacturing, you might target zero wastage or whatever, or maybe 10% wastage, or if it's the general operations, you might find that you are targeting zero casualties and all those things. So, or maybe if you're a hospital, they have clinical outcomes. So those are the things that you can target from the operational point of view. And you can also target maybe jobs, because South Africa, as I said earlier, that in South Africa we have a high unemployment rate, I mean. So you might want to show what is your target in terms of employment. It doesn't only talk to potential funders or potential investors, but it also talks to your community objective in terms of contributing towards the economy. So you have the employee or the employment side of things, or the social objectives. So that's on the social side, and you might have maybe staff retention and all that. Then as well, that might be objective that is targeting your internal employees. So you can see I've broadened up, and continuously, if you look at how these lessons are structured based on the 5 components of developing and managing a business plan. 1 is on strategy. 2, it's on operation. 3, it's on call it marketing. 4, it's on call it financial. 5, it's on management or people. So you need, even when you're setting objective, try to cover these 5 areas. Strategy, what is your strategic objective? Maybe expansion into the market, acquire 10% of the market and all that. And then maybe you look at that's the model or the business model in terms of setting up in different areas. On the market side, customer satisfaction, maybe it might be one, customer acquisition, those type of things which are related to customers. It will address the market. Operational, it must be more on efficiencies. So if your business, let's say, is not heavy manufacturing, so on the operational side, you can look at maybe your profit margins to say you want to achieve maybe 10% net profit or 20% net profit. I know it's in the financial presentation, is presented as a financial ratio, but what are these ratios in terms of profitability? It measures your operational efficiency. So if you are making 100 rand and then you are making a profit of 2 rand, some businesses you might find that they are making the same 100 rand, but they're making a profit of 10 rand. That means they are operationally efficient. So it's not necessarily a financial target or a financial objective. It's more operational. And then the financial objective, it will be to make a turnover of 4 million in the next 3 years. That's now the financial. And then on the management side, it might be the recruitment, the retention, maybe the disciplinary and all those things. So you set the target for employees, for human resources. So those are the 5 components that when you're setting your objectives, make sure that you cover them so that your objectives are more broader. They're not narrow, because if they are narrow, you might get lost in the process because the strategy might not be talking to the broader business. When you set in the objectives, you must limit them to 5, right? The more you put, if you put more than 5, they can be less, but if you put more than 5 objectives, then they become too clustered, and you might not be able to break them down nicely so that you cascade them into the performance target of the employees. So we're talking objectives now. So once you've set the objectives, those objectives must now guide you in terms of the operation and the size of the operation that you want to set up. Okay, that's where now the way the operational plan comes into be. To say you have these objectives, right? You've set 5 objectives, and you make sure that they address the broader business management topics, which one is the strategy. You address the strategy, you address the operations, you address the marketing, you address the financial, you address your human resource or your people side. So these objectives that you have set, now they are the ones that are going to guide you on the type of operation that you're going to set, or the type of operation that you're supposed to set up. All right. Then once you've done that, then you go into now operationalizing your objectives, what can be achieved. And remember, the objectives, they must be practical and still be linked to the feasibility study that we spoke about in the previous lesson. So the objectives must not be isolated from the feasibility study that you have done. Or if you didn't do it, make sure that you do a feasibility study, and you can go on the platform and read and watch videos on the feasibility study. So the objectives, we assume that you've done the right things. You looked at the feasibility, and you looked at the objectives, are they achievable? And you develop those 5 core objectives that I've just mentioned. And as I said, now these 5 objectives, they are going to guide you in terms of what type of a setup do you have to develop, or do you have to put in place so that you achieve these objectives, right? So in terms of the setup, one, it will talk about the manufacturing or the operational resources that you need to make sure that you secure, right? So depending, I was in when you're doing feasibility, actually I kept on referring to the retail, the spaza shop concept. So I'll just bring in that example that you want to set a spaza shop, which is just below your U-Save. It's not the high-end one. It's a spaza shop, but it's not the low-end one. So it's a medium retail shop that you normally find in communities, in your rural communities, or in your townships, which is fairly average, and then you are selling basic things to the community. So depending on the objectives that you want to achieve, number of let's say it's the profit that you want to achieve, the profit margins, the number of employees that you want to employ, maybe the compliance part in terms of efficiencies, maybe you want to keep limited stock and all those things. So those now, they're going to guide you in terms of the type of building that you need to either erect or buy, or mainly there are those two, or rent. Okay, you can buy, you can erect it, you can rent it from the landlord. So even when you're looking for the premises that you can set up, or you can set up an operation, you're going to look at the objectives that you want to achieve. So it will guide you in terms of the size of the building or of the property, and the settings and the setup of that site, right? It must be guided by what you want to achieve, not the other way around. You don't build the infrastructure and try to achieve the goals. You determine the goals, you determine the objectives, the mission, vision, and then once you have those, then you look at the required infrastructure for you to achieve your mission, for you to achieve your goals. Okay. So they'll guide you in terms of how big the building is supposed to be, right? How is it supposed to be set up? Okay, and then from the feasibility study, you know that the type of customers that you are targeting. Do you need a parking base, or do you need maybe a seating area, a bigger seating area, or you just need a place where you can sell and people buy, take away, and they leave? It depends on the feasibility study in terms of the type of markets that you will be targeting. Then from the feasibility study as well, you look at the competitors. Remember, you looked at competitors in your feasibility study in terms of who are you competing with. So you look at the competitors and you come up with a value proposition. What will make you unique, right? Because if you are not unique, then why are you even setting up a business? There must be something different that you're doing versus your competitors. So based on that, then for your building or your infrastructure, it will be set up based on the feedback that you got from the feasibility study and your customer base and how you want to make yourself unique or different, right? So for a spider shop, you might need maybe, I don't know, 180 square meter building for your targeted market. You might need to have shelving, and the type of shelving as well, it needs to talk to your customers. Are you servicing customers that are looking for the cheap product, the cheapest product that they can get? Or are you servicing customers that are looking at reasonably priced products, but from the more or less safe and clean and hygienic place? So it means the setup will be different if you are servicing. You don't just put a setup. It depends on the type of customers that you'll be servicing. So you look at the infrastructure that you need to put in, the type of shelving that you need to put in place, and then it guides you in terms of what you need, because depending on the size, okay, there's certain businesses that you might need certain approvals if you are operating at certain scales. Like service station, I know currently if your tank is less than 30,000 liters, you don't need EIA. If maybe you are in maybe broiler or whatever, egg, chickens that make egg, whatever, if you are growing chickens that are less than 5,000, if I'm not mistaken, you don't need EIA. So that now your objectives will determine what infrastructure you need, the type of infrastructure that you're gonna need, the type of approval, and the operating permits that you need, so that when you develop your operational plan, you know the permits that you're looking for, you know the size, the type of the structure, and then as well, depending on the objectives, the type of product that you need to carry. Okay, will you be able to access the product that you need to service the market? That's another thing that you need to look at. So, but these things are guided by by your objectives, what you want to achieve. Okay, so now we're on the infrastructure. You set up the infrastructure that is appropriate to achieve your objective. That's very important. And that infrastructure, obviously, it must have everything that talks to the customer segment that you're servicing. Don't go overboard with things that are not necessary. That's why I kept on emphasizing when I was giving the feasibility study lecture to say, you need to be able to identify the customers that you want to service. It mustn't just be broad. You need to go and pick the customers that will be more viable or more profitable for you. So even when you are setting up your operation, keep the customer in mind to say, these are the type of customers that I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for this type of customers, what type of infrastructure should I put in place? What type of interior design of the operation should it be? And then it comes back to, from the feasibility study now, what type of business model do I want to implement? If it's a fancy business model, obviously the design of the shop and the building of the shop will be a little bit different when you start operationalizing it. So it depends on a lot of things. So the feasibility study will guide you in terms of the infrastructure that you need to implement, so that you are able to take advantage of the opportunity that you have identified. And as well, the business model that you have developed, the concept, it will also help you to in determining the infrastructure that you need. I mean, if you are servicing customers, some customers might be far, you might be delivering, so you're going to need a delivery vehicle. So it's part of the operation to see if I'm looking for walk-ins. The operations must be situated where it's easier for people to access you. But if you're going to deliver, it doesn't matter if you are okay, but you can't be that far because the transport cost will be significant. But you could be in the cheapest place in terms of rent, but where you can still access your customers. Because if you are delivering and your customers never come to your premises, you might as well keep the investment in the design and interior stuff to the minimum, and then make sure that you have proper vehicles, proper infrastructure for you to deliver to your customers. So you need to understand the business model that you are implementing so that you set up a proper operational plan or an operations infrastructure so that you are able to service the needs of the customers. And as you're doing the operational plan, you have identified the premises, you have identified the infrastructure, the equipment that are required, you have identified all that, and then you design your process flow. Meaning, you need to know your activities as a business from A to Z, right? You look at the processing. It's like now, for example, Super Deal Maker. If you have Super Deal Maker as an app, the delivery process is that the person will register, the person will do the business plan, will print the business plan, and should they want a consultant, they can appoint the consultant there. Then we need to verify and approve that consultant, and the consultant provide the services using the platform without us getting involved. And then if they wanted to submit for funding, then we'll facilitate that process and facilitate the communication. So that's the process of Super Deal Maker. So you need to understand your process as the business. You develop that process and make sure that the process, the way it's designed, is as efficient as possible. So you'll have all your processes from activities from 1 to 10 in terms of key activities that the operations will be performing. So you need to make sure that you describe your processes and you know the steps that will be followed for you to produce the service or the product that you're producing. So it's now that on operational plan in terms of the resources that are required. Now we're going to go into the management side of things, the people side of things, and the financial side. Okay, we just looked at the infrastructure that is required in terms of the operations. You have identified the infrastructure, you have identified the process flow, you have identified the design of your factory or your operation to be able to service the customers that you're targeting. And obviously, with the operational plan, then if you want to develop it and put it in your business plan, you don't have to worry about it. You can go in Super Deal Maker and start developing your business plan there. There's operational plans there. There's process flow. There's in terms of the number of employees required and all that. So we made it easier for you on the app to be able to develop your business plan, including this operational plan. Even with the objectives that you set, the mission and vision, there are tabs in the Super Deal Maker app. Just go in and you populate it, and it makes it easier to generate that business plan that you can use to source funding. Going into the management or the people side of things. Remember now, we just looked more on the actual infrastructure or the resources that you're looking for, or the resources that you need to make sure that you have access to be able to develop your business, to operationalize your business. Now, as I said, your operation is guided by what you want to achieve, your mission, vision, and goals, right? So now you need a team that will be able to execute You can have the infrastructure, you can have the mission, the vision, the infrastructure, the operations. You can design your operational flow in terms of what activities will follow each other or how you produce each item. But if you don't have the team to execute that, then you'll have a serious challenge. Now, in deciding on the size, the type of the team is driven by, one, the objectives that you want to achieve, two, the type of operations that you will be setting up in terms of the infrastructure that we just spoke about. Now, when you're looking at the operationalizing your business idea, make sure that you have the right teams in the right places. Okay? Because without a good team or a competent team, then you are applying for a disaster. Because you can have the best plans, but if you can't execute them, if you don't have a team to execute on those plans, then you might not be able to achieve your mission or your objectives. So make sure that you have a team. And if you're a startup, you don't necessarily have to have employees internally. You can outsource it if it's possible, depending on the type of business that you are operating. But there are certain key positions in any business that are very, very important. Okay, so if you are running a one-man show, you are opening a spaza shop, then let's say you're gonna be the shopkeeper, if you can call it that. You'll be in the shop. You are the one who's selling, the one who's dealing with customers and all that, counting stock, cleaning, and doing everything in the shop. So, but you need to think about the other people around you, the other stakeholders. Okay, there must be stuff that needs to be ordered. Okay, you can do the ordering system within the business, but who's going to go collect or deliver? So if you don't have an internal employee that you can allocate that supply chain component, you need to know how you're going to manage that supply chain. Are you going to close the shop and go do your shopping, or your shop doesn't open on Sunday and that's when you buy your stuff, or you can maybe work with other shop owners in the area so that when they're going to buy, they also buy for you, or whatever arrangement that you want to make. So you don't necessarily have to hire for each and every position. Certain things, certain activities within your operation can be outsourced to either a supplier or a partner that you are working with. But not all activities you have to employ. So if you are to a spaza shop, but I hope your mission is not to be self-employed or to be the only one in the business forever, because now that will be just a lifestyle business. It will be just for survival, not necessarily building a business. So initially, you might be the only one. You are going to be the shopkeeper, but you need to have people who will be able to order and all that. And if you are delivering, you must partner with others, maybe a local guy there who's got a van or something that can deliver for you, because you can leave the store and go deliver. Okay, but if you're setting up a U-safe size, you might need to have a driver, and you might need to have a delivery truck. And on the other side, you might need to have your supply chain department, people who will be ordering, people who will be looking after the stock to make sure that you always have your stock. So it depends on the size of your operation in terms of how you approach it. And then, as well as your finances, you need to look at outsourcing your finances, obviously to an accountant. And initially, but as you grow, and as the size of your business become bigger, you might need to hire an accountant, which is going to be internal. So in your operational plan, you need to make sure that you identify the key positions that, one, you're going to hire, or it might be immediate or in future. And two, the ones that you're going to outsource until you are big enough to and make them internal. So that's the strategy that you need to decide on. Then you develop what they call an organogram to see who fits where, and then if those positions will be internal or external, so that whoever is looking at your operational plan or the business plan can see your chart to say these are the positions that are critical to the business, and these ones will be the ones that will be internal, and this one will be outsourced. So that's how you come up with your management plan in terms of the positions that are important for the business and which ones are going to be internal. And obviously for the internal ones, you need to make sure that you cost them. You know how much it will cost you in salary bills. The salary bill, I mean, where you identify the cost. If you don't already have them in the business, then you need to look at the market, to look at the salary scale of those type of positions that you want to fill. And then the other thing is, now maybe this one applies more on the businesses that are producing, or they're operational, or they are operationally intense in terms of activities within the production or the service they're providing. Like if you are a mining company, you're gonna need the rock drillers and all those specialized positions, like your engineers and land surveyors and all those people to make a part of your team, and they become very, very critical. You can't operate without. And like if you are a consulting business, you're gonna need consultants, experienced consultants and administrators and all that, so that you are able to provide your client with better service. And if you are training, I'm just giving examples, you're gonna need facilitators, assessors, moderators. But I can say that as RMK, as a training institution, we don't have, okay, I can facilitate, but we don't have full-time facilitators employed. What we do is we go look for projects, and once we get a project, then we look at the facilitator that will be suitable. Then we go out into the market and look for the facilitator specifically for that project. That's how we approach our team. So in that, we're using that approach, our team will remain lean in a way that we don't have unnecessary overheads loaded on the business. Because if you don't do that, you don't look at your operations closely, you're not guided by what you're trying to achieve, your operational plan, then you might hire people that you don't necessarily need. So when you're hiring, make sure that you really, really need this position, because there is revenue that you're losing by not having that position, or you are compromising certain things. You are compromising quality and all those things. So don't hire for the sake of hiring. Don't hire for the sake of impressing your funders or investors that are hired people. The most important thing that I think even your investors are looking for is to make sure that you hire people that are required and they are necessary for your operation. That's very important. And as you're looking at your operations, you need to look at your human resource needs, right? As I said earlier, that you need to identify which positions or which skills are critical for your operation. So there are certain skills that maybe they might not be important. There are certain skills that you might need, and you might be able to get out from the market. Like as a training organization, okay, but now we're moving online. But we used to print a lot of paper. But that doesn't mean we need a printing person. It's because we do the printing once in a while. So even whoever we can find time to do the printing and the punching and all those things, and preparing the learner files, right? You don't necessarily need to employ a person, because that job is a once-off thing. You don't print every day. But if you're a printing shop, you're gonna need somebody to print. you need to appoint somebody to do the printing every day. So that's the difference. There are certain activities that you don't necessarily need to have a warm body in the business. The business can still operate efficiently without having that warm body in the business. So now your operational plan must guide the type or your organizational structure in terms of to the type of people that you need in the business. Who is critical, who is not? Who can you outsource, who can't you outsource? Now, the other thing that you need to consider is where do you put your business? Like location of your business. Remember, some businesses operationally, it didn't make sense to put them in certain areas because you may not have the necessary skills in that area to hire. So you might have to go outside to find the skills. So it's very important when you're looking at the operations and where you're setting it up, because in that space you might not have the skills. But remember, there's certain operations that you can't. The location is based on maybe access to your raw material or access to customers. So you might be forced to import the skills that you need to operate. So each operation is different, but it's important for you to look at if your location is not dependent on something that doesn't move, like your raw material. If you are mining, you can't set up your operation somewhere while you mine the mineral resources are here. It means you need to set up here. So you need to deal with the issue of finding the necessary skills wherever you can find it and bring them to the mine, instead of the mine going closer to where the skill is. So those are the things that you need to look at in terms of where are you setting up the operation, and as well as the type of market that you're servicing. So where you put the operation, it depends on as well on the different type of businesses. Certain businesses, they prefer to be closer to the raw material, right? Like maybe in the timber business, right? You'll see that if you're a timber business, you must be closer to it's advisable to be closer to your raw material, because they cut the tree is still wet, right? So if you are far from where you get your raw material, you need to transport that wet tree, which is heavier. It's going to cost you more to transport it. But if you put your operations, your processing operations next to the plantation, then you don't have to transport it far, but you'll only transport the finished product. And remember, the finished product is probably less than 50% of the original timber, because one, it's dry. Two, the waste is being cut and it's been cut into shape. So what you'll be transporting, it will be let's say it's the roof trusses. It will be the clean cut roof trusses. They don't take a lot of space. You can transport more, but most importantly, they are smaller and they're a little bit lighter, because you're in the process of doing the roof trusses. You have to put them in a kiln where you heat them up so that they are dry, so they don't have a lot of water. And then you can transport more in terms of quantities. So it makes sense for you to put maybe your mill next to the plantation rather than putting your mill next to the customers, because the customers are taking end product which is dry. So those are the things, the business models. If you're looking at setting up the operation, you look at your business model. What are you providing for the customers? If you're providing something that you can transport it over a long distance, then it's better to get the raw material and transport that raw material to where you are so that you can service the customers. It's like, let's say the Chinese, in terms of the raw material that they get from Africa or whatever, the West. They get in the raw material and then transport it to China. And they process it there, and it comes back as a finished product. So you might be thinking, why don't they just buy it and process it here and sell it here? It's because the market in China is bigger, and in China they have massive subsidies for manufacturing and all that, and they can get cheap labor. So the production process, it will cost them more if they are closer to the raw material than if they are closer to the customer. Because that side, they are able to get away with a lot of, they're not strict labor laws compared to South Africa. And they have access to government grants and all those things, and they can get electricity a little bit cheaper than they can get. And maybe even the electricity is more reliable than the South African electricity. So it makes sense for that type of business now to set up their operations closer to the customer than setting up the operations closer to where the raw material is. So in terms of the logistics, you need to look at the logistic part to say, where do you put your operation? So that you know, you decide on the location, and you look at the pros and cons of putting your operation in a certain location, which is very, very important. It can be a difference between your business surviving and your business going under. So location as well, it becomes very, very important. So that's now how you develop your operational plan. You look at your objectives, or you set your objectives. What do you want to achieve, your mission and vision? And from the objectives, then you look at the business model that you have analyzed under your feasibility study to see which the model is best. Then once you have those two, then you start developing your operational plan in terms of how you're going to operationalize it. And as I said earlier, the operational plan is dependent on the objectives, the resources that you're going to need, where you're going to put it, the delivery or the supply infrastructure, how you're going to put, how big the team, the size of the team that you need to run your operations, and the logistics. Where do you put your plant? Do you put it next to the customer or next to the raw material, depending on the type of business that you are in? But ultimately, the plan is, what you're supposed to develop from this module is a business plan in terms of the operation side of things. Where you're going to put it, what will be your mission, your vision, your operating processes, your access to raw material, where you're going to get the raw material. You look at the team that you're going to need. You develop the organogram in your plan to say, I need this team. This ones will be internal. This one will be outsourced. Then you look at the location in terms of the logistics. Where are you basing it? Closer to the customer or closer to the raw material, which it will make a difference in terms of your business and its operation. So that's the lesson on the operational plan or operations plan. It looks at the mission, vision, and goals. You look at the actual operating process. You need to have the organogram, the flow chart in terms of your activities. You need to know where you're getting your raw material. You need to know where you'll be supplying where your customers will be, so that you can develop your supply chain process. You need to know the team that you're going to need in terms of the expertise that are critical for your business. Then you do your organogram, and then you determine the logistic side of things to say how are you going to conduct your logistics. Are you going to use your own trucks, or are you going to outsource it to external parties? As I said, in terms of the team, you need to decide up front in terms of the approach that you're going to take. And you can take a different approach initially. And as you grow, as you acquire resources, then you can change that later. That's very, very important to make sure that you understand what is expected according to the objective, and then implement the necessary structure in place so that it's more lighter, because you are not a big corporate where you just load everything, you just hire for every position that you need. You might not have the financial muscles to do that. So you need to be able to decide what is critical, the size of operation, how much will it cost me to set up this? Do I have alternatives? So you explore different options, but the guiding factor will be your strategy, your objectives, your vision. And now you're going to look at, will you be able to access, given the feasibility study that you have done, will you be able to access funding using that feasibility study? Lucrative is the market that you're trying to target. Those things are very, very important when you're looking at your operational plan. Oh, and lastly, when you're looking at your operational plan, after you've done that plan, you will obviously now know how much it's gonna cost you to set up that operation. You need to have, if you have to set up build a structure, you need to have the building plans and the costing for that. If you have to buy equipment, if you have to buy vehicles, you need to make sure that you get quotations for that, so that the figures that you are using in your plan are based on actual figures that you've obtained from independent suppliers, which should be on arm's length quotations, so that you are clear on the cost that is required to set up that operation. And the approvals and all those things, they cost money. So you need to be able to know or identify the cost, obtain quotations for everything. If there's a figure there's an amount that you say you're going to pay, obtain quotations. So after all is said and done, everything must be costed, and you must have the quotations for the costing of setting up the operation, so that even if you approach the investors, or even if you are funding it from your own money, but if you have the costing, you will know ultimately how much it's going to cost you to set up. So now, if you don't have the money and you're unlikely to raise funding, that means that will be the right time to stop with the project, because you will have done your feasibility study, or you'll have identified the idea, done the feasibility study. Now you're developing the operational plan. You're looking at how you're going to set up the operations and how it's going to run. So if from the result from this planning or this operational plan development, you identify that the business will not be viable, then it's a good time to stop. Okay, no, not viable as such, because you have done the feasibility study, so you know it's feasible, but you might not be able to raise the funding to develop this business. So you might not be able to continue. That's the important one. And make sure that you know the costing. You get your 3 quotations from different suppliers, so that you know the true value or the true amount that you will be required for you to set up that operation. I thank you. That is our lesson on operational plan or operations plan. And now we're going to go into the market analysis and market study. Not market study, but market analysis and marketing plan, so that you develop a marketing plan for these operations that we just discussed. So if you're setting up this operation, then you need to have, next to it, you need to have the marketing and the market plan, so that you don't set up an operation that will not have throughput, or will not have customers that are looking for products. So that might be a sunk cost in a way if you don't have the market. So in our next lesson, we're going to look at how you access that market. How do you develop your marketing plan, so that you fully utilize or sweat these assets to make sure that these assets are used optimally. You need to have customers for you to be able to set up an efficient operation. So the next lesson is on marketing and developing marketing plan. I thank you.